Next speaker of the day is architect Vatsala Cunha. Her topic is first semester architectural design.
Good afternoon. I am Vatsala Cunha and I'm going to speak about Architecture Design 1, which is the first semester design studio, and it's also perhaps the very first thing that you encounter when you start your architectural career. So first year is perhaps the most significant year of our architectural lives. During this period, the faculty plays a particularly crucial role. They initiate and inculcate the responsible values, the samskars, the motivation, insight, and open out the world through architecture to its students. First semester acts as a bridge between carefree life of schooling and training to become a professional architect. It is important to design the syllabus for this year, keeping this important context in mind. This semester should bring out the depth of knowledge, effort, and responsibility involved in becoming an architect. To ensure better standards, not dilution, but a different attitude to the syllabus is needed. Effort should be made to inculcate depth through contextual learning, so that all those who are here to pass time and to improve their dowry index look for pastures which are less steep. The exploration of this depth has to start with a familiar context. Abstraction will follow in subsequent semesters. Students join professional architecture courses through CET and similar exams. This means that they have already put in a lot of hard work to get to this point. From here onwards, this intensity and momentum must be sustained, if not increased. It is also important to note that these students are from the science background. Although many faculty members I've heard in the past, they complain about how the science background of these students is actually a very big handicap. And they themselves actually promote this very linear journey from having a concept and then moving through analysis and arriving at the object building. So I don't know how they say that science background is a problem and actually advocate a very science-based approach to design itself. But contrary to popular opinion, a science background is a big advantage. The syllabus must add design thinking in all its heroics and poetics to this background to understand and enjoy architecture and its uniqueness in its completeness. From day one itself, both the students and the faculty must feel that they are exploring in deep waters. AD1 Studio, being the first design studio, demands a different approach from other studios. It should involve talks, presentations by faculty and invited speakers, research, learning to see and draw before designing, stepping out to measure, to observe, and in short, explore. We have to start on this assumption that all of us are not spatially or architecturally sensitive. But this sensitivity can be explored, it can be discussed, and it certainly can be imbibed. Faculty has to put in maximum amount of work for the studio to achieve this. Prepare presentations, maybe models, show by example, through documentaries, some hand-holding, some paper folding, a lot of discussion, exploration, of all those forces that inform architecture. AD1 should be about providing a glimpse of the vastness of architecture. It needs to be mindful of exploring multiple starting points through which one can initiate the design. Some of these starting points may sound very mundane, like having to deal with a site which sits on a T-junction of a road. Some intentions are very lofty, like wanting to build the fastest and the thinnest skyscraper using Adobe. But these are all valid starting points, and this needs to be communicated to the students. AD1 should be dedicated to cultivating an instinct for all that informs architectural design. This includes spatial intelligence, material intelligence, political intelligence, social intelligence, and climatic intelligence. The existing system for 40 students per class is scheduled for 8 hours a week for 12 weeks, and it totals up to 96 hours in a semester. And evaluation is progressive marks 50 term work 200, which actually totals up to a whopping 25%, 250 marks out of the total of 1,000. The proposed system should, also for 40 students, which is handled by 2 internals and 2 visiting faculty. I'm not sure if this information is correct, but somebody told me that's how they conducted right now. Okay, and the format should be studio plus lectures, slideshows, and field trips. The total time continues to be 96 hours a semester, but I propose that we break it down into smaller units of only 3 hours each, which will make 32 studio modules actually. I think it would be a little bit of administrative jugglery as to how you will achieve these 32 modules. Instead of talking about weeks, I don't think students who are just out of school can be expected to sustain interest more than beyond 3 hours. So I think this is a semester where we'll cover a whole lot of ground, but in smaller packets perhaps. And the evaluation also should be broken down further into progressive marks of 5 projects of 10 marks each, out of which 2 should be team projects and 3 perhaps should be individual projects. And these projects should be in form of booklets, portfolios, or some kind of documentation, which actually can be used in subsequent semesters. And the term work should again get broken down into 2 individual projects of 75 and 125 marks each. And the overall total still remains the same of 250 out of 1,000 marks. The intent should include to develop architectural awareness, more importantly, to learn the ways of seeing, assimilating, and documenting space and the act of placemaking. And even more important, to inculcate the samskar of being a professional architect by introducing ideas of optimism at the core of all creative acts, architectural beliefs and courage, ethics and responsibility towards society as well as resources. I think it's very important to inculcate all these values very early on in our architectural lives. Hey, this is stuck. Okay, got it, thanks. The objective is to gain a broad view of architecture, to gain a broad view of an architect's professional role, to gain spatial intelligence, to gain material intelligence, to gain political intelligence, and to learn the basics of architectural representation. I think without covering all these grounds, all the subsequent semesters will tend to suffer. So I think they should be in very small packets, but all these things should be inculcated. The current structure of the syllabus includes workshop 1, structures 1, history, and graphics 1, as well as materials and methods, and basic design and visual arts. And to this, I propose that we add 2 more either electives or subjects, or maybe find some way of getting these also in. Architectural representation, maybe that can be part of graphics 1, and also terrain and surveying, terrain understanding and surveying. I think it's extremely crucial to start making students understand that architecture is always situated on something. It's not something that's going to hang on the walls. So the overall outline, not the method, perhaps that's the poor choice of word, it should actually be maybe a framework, is to explore, document, and synthesize. The 32-week semester should be divided into a series of smaller instructional, exploratory, and documentational exercises. Module 1, which is perhaps the first class that you will encounter, should be a presentation by the faculty on what architectural education entails. Maybe give students an overview of what they will cover in 5 years. I don't know if it's actually conducted like that right now, perhaps it is, but I think it's very important. I remember in my times, we just sort of walked in and told what a T-square and a set square was, and we were drawing parallel lines by the 3rd hour of the year. But I think to get an overview is very important as to what is it that we are stepping into, because many people walk into architecture without knowing what it is going to be all about. And although there may be issues of whether it is their first choice and whether they are dropouts from engineering and they couldn't get engineering and hence they are in architecture, I don't think any of that matters. If they're there, I think it's the job of the faculty and all those other people, maybe practicing architects who are involved in architecture, to bring in that excitement. I think we all feel it. We have to communicate that excitement into the classrooms. That it may not have been the first choice, but it's perhaps the perfect choice that they've made. And they have to sort of make peace with it and start enjoying it. The second is they have to learn what exactly being an architect involves. And I think inviting different kinds of people to come and talk in this first module is important. Practicing architects will bring in a slightly different point of view. The people who are into, all the people who are in academia who teach will probably bring in a different point of view, but I think they all need to be sort of put across on the table. The third point is to introduce the idea of architectural courage in beliefs, in having to stand up for something. I don't think if one should take a value judgment there, whether what you believe in is right or wrong, but still having that courage that, okay, this is what I believe in and this is what I will pursue as a professional. And emphasis should be on how architecture is about life itself and how it influences social behavior. So it comes loaded with a certain social responsibility. And a very, very simple example is what a boundary wall can do. And the environmental choices we make through choice of materials and all of it impacts the world around us. So a boundary wall example is a very simple thing for most people to understand. But it's a very profound sort of thing to be able to explain to first-year students, I think. Because on my street where I live, there are all sorts of boundary walls. The old-fashioned ones are really only 3 feet high, so people actually just rest on them and talk to neighbors, anybody who's passing by, and you know who the vegetable guy is, and you know everybody by their first names. And the newer guys, the new players on the street, have high walls and they have electric fences, and they're pretty much telling everybody, don't talk to me, I don't want to talk to you. So our designs actually affect not just our own social behavior, but also for the people we design for. So that social responsibility is a very crucial sort of factor to communicate. Then concepts of community, hierarchy, culture, age, and gender-sensitive spaces through exposure and awareness. And architecture's connection with other forms of knowledge like mathematics, geology, chemistry, sociology. All these can be very, very small sort of bursts of information. I think this is a year when you have to just bombard them with things. And something is going to stick. Not all of it will stick, but something will stick, and whatever people have an affinity for, they will actually take that on and start sort of building their own personalities around that, perhaps. And like Edgar was saying, that once you start finding your own strengths, then you will actually just make that as your architectural form. Module 2 should, again, faculty responsibility. I'm actually not going to talk so much about what the students are expected to do. I'm actually talking more about the faculty is expected to do. So module 2 actually is about telling them the stories, the narrative, the many reasons why people have built over time, apart from the basic need for shelter, like the big monuments, the Gol Gumbaz, the Imam Bada, Fatehpur Sikri, Brihadeshwara Temple, Amer Fort. You go to any of these places, only architects look at the architecture. Most of the people actually are interested in the narrative behind why, the reason why that particular building was built. Imam Bada is full of stories, and I think it's very important actually to understand that. Then the next one is a narrative through typology in very broad categories like monumental, residential, and infrastructural like maidans, reservoirs, bridges, and baulis. And the third one, which architect Ravindra, the previous speaker, also said, concepts of in-between spaces and maybe the temporal spaces. The katte, the verandas, the courtyards, the pavilion, mantapas, colonnaded halls, the bazaars, the temporal. I think temporal life is very, very important in India. And formal education tends to ignore it because perhaps we don't know how to structure it. But it's such an integral part of Indian life. And I think we just have to find a way of addressing it. And module 3 goes into the first assignment, which should be of 10 marks, and a group assignment maybe of groups of 4 is to collect local stories. If they're in Gulbarga, they should go around finding whatever architecture there is. There's always a history to a place. Whether it is a more modern one or a less modern one, it doesn't matter. They have to actually find the history of the place. I think it will also give them an opening as to how to connect to their own backgrounds and to their own contexts. And maybe list out the important local buildings and explain why they feel they are important. And list and draw silhouettes of perhaps the favorite buildings or places. A little bit of drawing exercise as well. Module 3 is the intent. Again, it's the job of the faculty to start explaining what architects have stood for and fought for in more recent architectural history. Nari Gandhi, Pilu Modi, Laurie Baker, Minette de Silva, Udzon, Eileen Gray, Lina Dobadi, Baragan, Gaudi, Candela, Korb, bring out all the anecdotal stories from their lives. And some of them have led extremely interesting lives. They have fought many battles. And I think it will be interesting to communicate the human side of architectural lives to the students rather than just making them do some design exercises. I think this semester is less about design. It's more about getting an overview of what architecture can be. Also, the stories of oppression and dominance through architecture, through size and scale and choice of materials and iconography. Like Lutyens' Delhi, it is all about overpowering a colonized nation. Stories of liberation as well, like the great Maidans, the story of Jallianwala Bagh. I think all the faculty basically has to do a lot of homework. They have to collect all this material and sort of put it across. And maybe the collection of the material can be done also with the help of students and make it part of the structure. Module 4 should be about material stories. The mud in the Gangetic Plain, thatch and mud, bricks and mud, mud and stone, stone and wood in the mountains, bamboo in the east, laterite in the coastal belt, slate and granite and basalt on the Deccan Plateau. Then great infrastructural works, the anicuts, the canals, the bridges, the reservoirs, bazaars, baulis. And this should actually be followed by an assignment. It should be actually followed by an assignment. Assignment 2, which is an individual assignment, is to make a portfolio of architecture with its material listings. For instance, forts of stone and mud, and coastal houses of laterite walls, or chettinad houses, basalt construction in Belgaum. And I think how that portfolio should look, the framework should be, the faculty can decide actually whether, but no, none of this internet download and Googling should be allowed. It should be something you go out and do. There are no quick fixes in all this. It should be a lot of hard work for both the sides, the students as well as the faculty. Module 5 is a field trip. I think it's very necessary for architecture students to get out of studios, like even Vijay said in the opening presentation. There is less to be achieved sitting inside. I think there's a lot more learning that can be done outside. Learning, and the field trip would include learning the ways of seeing by observing the, really? Oh. Learning the ways of seeing by observing the built environment around with the help of the faculty, meaning of enclosure, both covered as well as open. They can walk around college corridors, classrooms, Tipu's Palace, Gol Gumbaz, Choknath Temple, IIM. They should study the role of columns, planes, verticality, horizontality, role of light in shaping and transforming space, and draw. Module 6 and 7 is about architectural representation, an overview of conventions and techniques, importance of scale, drawbacks of what fit to paper does. Very important. I think scale is very important. Techniques of layering of information, sometimes on CAD packages, sometimes by having tracings, using color. But I think to be able to communicate your ideas, you have to have these skills. You are not going to achieve very much in your third and fourth semester if you don't learn all these things early enough. Need for international norms, all these things need to be explained. The pleasure of good drawings, I think that should be also communicated. And the role of anthropometric data, since I only have 2 minutes, I'm going to rush through this. Assignment 3 is for 10 marks, groups of 2, it's about taking measurements, maybe the groups of 2 so that 2 people can measure each other, make a chart of your own body so that you can use in your future studios your own body as the reference for measure. And also be aware that there are racial variations. Some races are more tall, some are less. Some people are more tall, some are not. And there's an excellent reference material in terms of a book called Indian Anthropometric Dimensions for Ergonomic Design Practice by an NID professor called Devkumar Chakrabarti. This should be followed by a pin-up review of the exercise assignments of exercise 1, 2, and 3, feedback from the students. And module 9, 10, and 11 should be design exercise with dimension building blocks. I think it's a very simple thing. Faculty comes with some fixed number of planes and maybe some roofing material, 9 walls, columns, and ask them to just create some sort of space. It doesn't have to be any type. And this should be an individual assignment of 10 marks. Then continuing spatial knowledge, the role of terrain understanding. I think this requires actually a little more explaining. People should actually step out of the studio and walk like Dayanand Sagar. It has an amazing site. If people walk here, they will get a sense of what terrain is. Sometimes it's flat, sometimes it's sloping, sometimes it's a steeper slope, sometimes some sites are on the leeward side, some get more rain. But walking is an extremely interesting and easy way to experience the space around us. It's hanging. Maybe it's just slow. Okay, module 14 is about drawing and representation. It's about telling the story of architectural representation from stone, the way people used to carve on stone, to going to other levels, reaching CAD right now, in between the part where people drew with pencil and paper and ink drawings, and why each of them had a certain way it could influence how you designed. And I think one can even talk about how things that were done in stone from Vastu Shastras were of a certain type, while when you do parametricism, the outcomes are dictated by the software. And you can do a comparison or discussion about whether they're similar or dissimilar, and how they're informed. Then module 15, 16 is a measure drawing exercise, maybe something familiar like a grandmother's house, or a local public space, a small temple, or a school classroom situated in a very familiar surrounding, and concepts of slopes and contours around that place. I think it's very important always to have that context. I need 2 more minutes. Module 17 is Introduction to Three-Dimensional Thinking through Sectional Intelligence, extremely crucial. The relationship between the plan and a section. Many people come to a final year thesis and actually they cannot draw a section of a plan that they have drawn. So a lot of people think in terms of plan, but they actually cannot do a projection in the 3rd dimension. I think that's a bit of a disaster if you're going to be practicing architecture. Then concepts of volume and scale, width to height ratios. Module 18 is about drawing sections through the measure drawing project that you did of the grandmother's house, and it must absolutely show the surroundings. Module 19 is term work. It's a small time problem, modifying grandmother's house, the act of placemaking. Or it could be a neighborhood park with a hopcoms and a milk booth. This is of 75 marks. It's an exercise in placemaking, not typology. Evaluation should be, there are certain criteria set out. that can be followed. Module 20 is a term project that you did in the previous module. You actually pin up and discuss it. It's something I think I talked about in communication, architectural communication course also, that everybody needs to learn to stand up and actually defend their ideas, what they produce. Then module 21 and 22 is about material intelligence. It's about collecting and documenting all the material within the 5-kilometer radius of you, so that you can walk and actually collect, none of the internet stuff. So people can either pick up material or photograph or draw or something like that. They can't download. And that should be followed by an assignment which shows the same work. And module 23 continues with material and understanding of material and their role in shaping space. And this actually, in this, faculty also should discuss why materials are used in a certain way, like why bricks are put flat and why beams are vertical, and how they relate to the structures. Then module 24 and 25, design exercise, working with materials to connect thinking and making, and should be followed by a pin-up and a discussion. Module 26 is a field trip, understanding of light as a material, and also should include a small module and sound and space. 27, 28, just finishing. 27 and 28, exploring multiple starting points and moving away from linear methodology of moving from concept to object. I think there should be no pressure of having to create a concept. I think people can use different ways of starting a project and then work forward or backward. Module 29 is about gravity and maybe define gravity, a very basic design exercise where you actually just give a fixed plan, maybe just 4 columns, and tell students to generate sections, because 4 columns themselves can actually translate into numerous ways you can deal with the section. Module 30 is about understanding the importance of interstitial spaces, the courtyards and the verandas, the colonnades, the second skins. And 31, 32 should be a final design exercise, creating a usable space, perhaps a temporary health clinic, which will add a temporal sort of nature to the exercise, with at least 3 documented materials showing the understanding of simple programmatic requirement, like of volumes, scale, light, terrain, inner space, open space, and the interstitial space. Exercise of 125 marks, and same criteria for evaluation. And basically, I think when students finish the first semester, they must feel that they're reborn, and that they're experiencing the world for the first time. And they should have this very extremely heightened awareness of the world through a very architectural sort of understanding. Thank you.